The sign flickered in the galactic dusk. Rust Bucket Saloon, humans only, mostly. Neon red letters buzzed against the thick glass, half dead like the man who installed them 2 decades ago. The bar sat on the fringe of the Orion expanse, a lonely speck on a forgotten moon where diplomats didn't bother and pirates showed respect. Or disappeared. Inside, the air was thick with smoke, static, and the sound of ancient blues mixed with low Martian bass lines. Plasma scorches decorated the walls like trophies. A dented power rifle hung above the bar. Polished, but clearly used. 5 old men sat around a round table, each hunched over a drink strong enough to sterilize cargo holds. They were retired soldiers, earthborn flesh and scar veterans from wars most species only read about in xenocultural ethics classes. They called themselves the Bastards, not out of pride, out of accuracy. "They don't make wars like they used to," growled Briggs, the one-eyed ex-sergeant who'd once punched a Harkari battle priest through powered armor. He nursed a glass of Centauri fire whiskey like it was sacred. "That's 'cause they don't make soldiers like us anymore," said Koji, ex-sniper, now the saloon's barkeep. His cybernetic hand clicked as he refilled a glass. "Or enemies," muttered old Vix, who hadn't said a full sentence since the Kari siege. He still wore his flak vest like the war never ended. They didn't talk about what they'd done. The universe didn't want to hear it. Humans had been the monsters once. Brutal, efficient, and victorious. Now they were a fading memory in the outer systems. A species better known for mining contracts and hard liquor, but they hadn't forgotten. Especially not Briggs. Not with what was coming. That night the saloon was quieter than usual. Even the jukebox didn't have the guts to play. The usual crowd, the smugglers, lost merchants, and ex-Marines, and avoided eye contact with the Bastards. They felt something in the air, something cold. Then the door hissed open. A figure walked in. Young, human, barely more than a kid. His uniform still sharp from academy starch. Clean face, nervous eyes. A Marine by rank, but not by fire. He looked around, swallowed hard, then approached the table. "I was told to find Briggs," he said. Briggs didn't look up. "You found whiskey. Order a glass or walk back out the way you came." "Sir." "Don't call me sir." The kid hesitated, then whispered, "They're back. The Trinaxis fleet. They've broken the treaty." Silence. The jukebox sparked, coughed, and died. Briggs slowly looked up. Koji tightened his grip on a bottle. Vix stood without a word. "How many?" Briggs asked. "All of them," the kid said. "And they're headed this way." Briggs stood up with a grunt. The old rifle above the bar hummed as he took it down. "Well," he muttered, cracking his neck, "let's remind them why they stopped fighting humans in the first place." The last time Briggs had suited up, the war ended 6 hours later. It wasn't luck. It was message sending. Now 20 years older and 2 vertebrae shorter, he stood in the saloon's back room, staring at a dusty weapons locker welded shut for peace of mind more than security. His old ID chip, surgically removed, then embedded into the hilt of a combat knife, still opened it. With a hiss of pressurized memory, the locker creaked open. Inside, a relic's arsenal. Matte black armor patched with non-standard upgrades, a pair of sidearm plasma cutters, an old grav pack, and a fusion core rotary cannon nicknamed Joan. She purred when powered up. Always did. Out front, Koji was prepping what passed for a plan. The Bastards never needed detailed strategy, just targets, timing, and fire direction. The kid, fresh from command, paced nervously while mumbling about fleet movements and treaty violations. "Son," Koji interrupted, "we fought the Trinaxis before your bones had marrow. Treaties are bedtime stories for species who don't bleed right." Briggs emerged in half-assembled armor. The glow from the chest unit bathed the room in a faint red. A long, deep exhale left his lungs like someone breathing after years underwater. "They're not coming for a fight," he said. "They're coming to finish the job they started." The kid looked pale. "Then we should evacuate. Get reinforcements." "Reinforcements?" Briggs barked a laugh. "You think Earth's going to send a fleet for a dust bar full of veterans and drunks? Son, out here. We're already ghosts." Vix grunted, which was agreement. That night the bar went dark. Every non-combatant was quietly escorted to the bunkers behind the still-active power silos. A couple of former pirates, a nurse from Io, even a Czarnik diplomat who once swore off violence. They all knew better than to argue. The bastards weren't defending a planet. They were defending a code. This saloon wasn't just their home. It was the last place where the old war still lived, a place where honor hadn't gone extinct in bureaucracy. Briggs walked the perimeter with the kid beside him, pointing out where to set charges, turrets, and fallback zones. "Why didn't Command tell us about the Trinaxis movement sooner?" he asked. The kid hesitated. "They don't think you guys matter." Briggs nodded slowly. "Good. That means we can surprise them." Just before dawn, the stars blinked, not with light, but absence. The Trinaxis fleet had arrived. Their ships were bone white, shaped like elegant blades. Beautiful, deadly, silent. Too big for a raiding party, too slow for diplomacy. Inside the saloon, Koji handed out last glasses of whiskey to the bastards. No toast, no speeches, just a nod. Then Briggs keyed into the comms. "To all Trinaxis vessels, this is Commander John Briggs of the retired Terran Bastard Corps. You broke the treaty. You crossed the line." He paused, looking at the others, then finished. "Now, let's see if you remember how this ends." The first shot didn't come from the Trinaxis. It came from Vix, silent as always, perched on a rusted satellite tower above the saloon, his ancient coil rifle stabilized with nothing but muscle memory and bitter habit. He squeezed the trigger once. A Trinaxis recon drone exploded mid-scan, scattering iridescent shards across the morning sky. The second shot came a heartbeat later, from orbit. A low hum swept across the moon as a Trinaxis cruiser loomed overhead, its underbelly bristling with elegant death. Plasma lances licked the surface like a serpent tasting its prey. The first blast hit just outside the perimeter fence. Sand and ferrocrete flew, but no casualties, because the bastards had already vanished. Ghost protocol, old Terran doctrine. Outlawed after the Second Varnax War for being too effective. Disappear, lure, strike. In the scrublands to the north, Koji lit the first trap. A buried EMP mine shorted the Trinaxis ground unit's hover skiffs, slamming them into the dirt. Before the dust settled, Briggs came out of the rocks like a ghost with a grudge, shoulder cannon hot, voice cold. "Brat!" Two aliens fell in a tangle of limbs and steel. "These boys ain't used to a fight without autolock," Briggs muttered into comms. "They ain't used to a fight at all," Koji replied, flanking them. From the bunkers, the kid watched through surveillance feeds and stunned. These men moved like shadows. They didn't follow modern tactics. They were tactics. Brutal, fast, final. Meanwhile, Vix relocated, climbing an old comms relay tower that hadn't seen use since the old Earth calendars. He set a timed fusion charge at its base, not to destroy it, but to make it fall, right on top of a landing skiff full of Trinaxis infantry. Boom, alien screams. Metal groaned. Silence. But for every drone and foot soldier dropped, two more came down. The Trinaxis weren't here for diplomacy. They wanted the bastards gone, wiped from the records. Ghosts don't stay buried forever, and someone up there remembered why these men were feared. Back inside the saloon, the kid tried to make sense of the reports. They've sent over 4 companies. That's hundreds of them. Koji, sweaty and bleeding from a graze, slammed a fresh mag into his sidearm. Let them keep coming. Briggs checked a long-range scanner, said more landers incoming. They think they're pushing us back. "Aren't they?" the kid asked. Briggs smiled grimly. "No, we're just pulling them in." Outside, the Trinaxis pushed forward, through trap fields and sniper nests, toward what looked like a vulnerable bar sitting alone in a desert. No shields, no artillery, just silence. And whiskey. Inside, Briggs connected a final cable from the basement fusion core to an ancient ignition panel. Vix flipped 3 manual toggles, fingers steady. "They think they've surrounded us," Briggs said. "They don't realize yet. We've caged them." The final lock clicked. The bastards took position. The saloon, their grave, their monument, their trap, was ready. The Trinaxis strike commander was named Valemore, a sleek, multi-eyed tactician bred in zero gravity and raised in war halls carved into asteroids. He stood inside his armored lander, staring at a tactical hologram of the battlefield. 5 aging Terran soldiers, he said, the translator smoothing out his hissing tones. 1 bar, minimal resistance, and still, we've lost 46. A junior lieutenant chirped nervously. They adapt, move, set traps. They're unpredictable. No, Vilemore said calmly. They're experienced. He turned to his communications officer. Send the next wave. Full perimeter breach. Leave nothing standing. Back at the rust bucket, the sky was on fire. The 5th wave descended in grav sleds, storm units in gleaming armor disembarking with eerie precision. But the desert had teeth, and the bastards had history on their side. The saloon looked dead, a hole-ridden shell half buried in dust. No movement. That was the invitation. Inside, Briggs sat at the bar, calmly cleaning the old rotary cannon Joan, while Vix checked the countdown on the core stabilizers. How long we got once it starts? The kid asked. 73 seconds, Koji answered, sliding a final clip into his rail pistol. Plenty of time to kill and curse. And run? The bastards all turned to the kid. No answer. The Trinaxis breached the front wall in a synchronized blast of pulse rounds. Dust and shattered memories flew into the air as they stormed through. What they expected. Surrender. What they got. Hell. Boom. The first Trinaxis squad was liquefied by a floor charge that detonated directly beneath them. The rest scrambled and were immediately met by Briggs and Koji, moving like twin reapers. Koji's cybernetic arm absorbed recoil as he fired shot after shot, while Briggs sprayed arcs of plasma with Joan, the rotary cannon growling with familiar rage. Outside, Vix collapsed a sidewall, exposing another squad and picking them off before they could react. He didn't say a word. He hadn't in years. His rifle did the talking. The kid, still tucked behind the rear counter, watched through a cracked holoscreen as 3 more dropships landed outside. His hands trembled. We can't win this, he whispered. Koji ducked behind the bar, reloading. Did we say we were trying to? Briggs shouted from above the bar, now perched on a broken beam, raining down energy bursts. This ain't about winning. This is about reminding them. The final trigger was wired to an old whiskey tap, because Koji had style. He twisted the brass handle like he'd done 1,000 times before. The fusion core below the saloon began to hum. Briggs checked his chrono. Tick-tock. The Trinaxis forces suddenly hesitated. Their suits' threat sensors pinged wildly. Some turned. Some froze. Too late. Vix hit the detonator. The saloon's foundation lit up with blue fire as the entire sublevel erupted, not in destruction, but in calculated collapse. The bar imploded, pulling the Trinaxis troops into its belly like a dying beast dragging its enemies to the grave. The rust bucket fell, a funeral pyre for ghosts that refused to be forgotten. Amidst the smoke and burning metal, Briggs crawled from the rubble, coughing blood but laughing. Koji limped beside him, armor torn, face blackened. Vix stood, somehow still standing. The kid emerged last, alive, shaking, eyes wide. How are we alive? Briggs spat blood. We weren't the target, they were. He looked out at the wreckage. Trinaxis elite troops scattered, broken, dead, and then a sound. A low metallic roar. From beyond the dunes came more ships. The final wave. Heavier, louder. Briggs turned to the others. We ain't done yet. The final Trinaxis wave came in with vengeance. Not recon skiffs, not ground squads, war titans, 6-legged siege mechs. Hive tanks bristling with plasma artillery. Atmospheric stabilizers darkened the sky as anti-orbital walkers thundered toward the smoldering ruins of the rust bucket. In the distance, the desert cracked under their march. They weren't here to kill humans. They were here to erase them. Guess they took us personally, Koji muttered, strapping a fresh mag into his sidearm. Blood leaked from his temple, but his eyes were sharp. We did kill about 1.5 battalions, Briggs rasped, dragging Joan from the wreckage. Her barrel glowed a faint red, whirring quietly like an old dog still ready to bite. The kid stood beside them, dirty and shaking. He'd stopped trying to make calls to command. Earth wasn't sending help. No one was. Just 3 ancient men and a rookie with half a charge in his rifle. They took refuge in the wrecked comms bunker behind the saloon. The Trinaxis were scanning, closing in. Briggs laid out the last few grenades, charge packs, and smoke canisters, like a man setting the table for a final meal. "There's a cave system beneath the ridge. We take that path, we disappear," Koji said. Briggs shook his head. "We disappear, they take the rest of this moon. They keep pushing. Maybe next time Earth listens a little slower. You planning to make a stand?" "No." Briggs grinned. "I'm planning to make a memory." They split up. Vix moved west to a cliff ledge, dragging his broken leg behind him. He brought 3 rail charges and 2 sniper batteries. The kid tried to stop him. "You're bleeding out." Vix gave a single glance, not angry, not sad, just final. He had one more job. Koji slipped into the dunes, where his arm's old stealth coating still shimmered faintly. He planted mines by touch, rewired ancient drone parts, and turned trash into traps. The desert was his canvas. And Briggs? Briggs walked straight toward the Trinaxis vanguard. One man, carrying a war cannon older than half the galaxy's current governments. He knew they'd scan him, knew they'd hesitate. A Terran war relic walking into the mouth of hell with no backup, no fleet, no future. That was the backup. "This is Commander Briggs," he broadcast on an open channel. "If you're listening, good, you should remember this face. You should remember what happens when you think humans don't bite anymore." Then he opened fire. Jones screamed. And so did the first line of Trinaxis armor. From the cliff, Vix launched his final round, straight through the energy shield of a siege mech. The explosion split the ridge in half. He didn't move again. From the dunes, Koji lit the field, plasma bursts and buried mines tearing holes in enemy ranks. The kid, now in the bunker alone, watched through the feed, tears carving lines in the dirt on his face. "They're dying out there," he whispered. The comms crackled. "No, kid," came Briggs' voice, wheezing, laughing, bleeding. "We're teaching." And then the horizon lit up. A final detonation, and the power cell Briggs had strapped to his chest engulfed the Trinaxis command skiff. The shockwave rippled for miles. Silence followed. The screen went dark. The dust hung in the sky like a second dawn. Ash, smoke, burnt ozone. From the wreckage of the battlefield, the only movement was the wind, blowing across scorched sand and twisted Trinaxis metal. The saloon was gone, reduced to molten fragments. Briggs, Koji, Vix, gone with it. But the war machines, they were silent now. Dead. The kid sat inside the half-collapsed bunker, hand clamped over a cracked rib. The emergency beacon blinked once every 5 seconds. Still active, still unheard. He didn't cry anymore. He just stared. At what was left. At what it meant. Hours passed. Eventually a dropship came. Not Trinaxis, not Earth military either. A freelance recovery rig, flagged by the automated SOS. The crew, grizzled traders from Andromeda, were halfway through looting the site when one of them stumbled on the kid, half buried, still gripping his rifle. "Jesus. Kid, you breathing?" He nodded. "Barely." They patched him up, gave him water, and asked what had happened. He didn't speak for a long time. Then he said, "They were legends." 2 weeks later, Earth Archive Terminal, unlisted military debrief, Black Site Echo 7. File upload. Rust Bucket Incident Log, Terran Moon Outpost, submitted by Lieutenant Jonah Wells. This wasn't a battle. It was a statement. They were old, broken, forgotten. But when the galaxy came knocking, they reminded everyone why Earth doesn't go quietly. You can retire a soldier, but you can't erase a bastard. The file sat in a queue for 5 more weeks before a data analyst finally read it. It was quietly marked as sentient cultural value high and rerouted to EarthGov's deep memory vaults. Not public, not yet. But stories have a way of leaking through the cracks. 1 year later, a bar on Nova Centauri Station, a new saloon, same name, the Rust Bucket, different crowd, young mercs, cargo haulers, green marines. But above the bar, framed in worn steel and sandglass, hung 3 things: a busted Terran rotary cannon, lovingly cleaned, a faded photo of 4 soldiers, all smiling at sunset with whiskey in hand, a handwritten plaque to Briggs, Koji, and Vix, the last bastards. May we all go out swinging. The bartender was a young man with tired eyes. If you asked him where he served, he'd just nod and pour. But some nights, if you caught him alone, really alone, And the bottle was halfway down. He'd tell you about the day the desert lit up. He'd tell you how the war ended not with reinforcements, but with ghosts holding the line. He'd tell you about whiskey, rust, and plasma rifles, and how that was how legends die, standing, firing, laughing.